Good morning, Moravi Rabotai. We're continuing on Masechet Berachot, and we are on Daf Samech Aleph Amud Bet 61b, the limud of Amud Yomi for the Shvat. Still, your last day officially of the Shvat. It's been dedicated by Justin and Sarah Zarabi, by Sha'ab and Shena Zarabi, by Armin and our Bracha Kahen for prosperity, health, happiness of their families and their children, Ezrat Hashem, much nachat from them. We are continuing in the story of Rabbi Akiva, and just one nugget that I wanted to share with you yesterday that did not get the chance to is a very interesting midrash and the Gemara. The midrash says that there were. We know about Harugei Lod. We spoke about this actually in Masechet Tanit, Daf Yud Chet, that Papus and Lulilos, there were two people who were killed, and Rashi there says these were people who gave their life up for Klal Yisrael. What happened was that the king's daughter was found murdered, killed, and they blamed the Jews, of course. And they wanted to kill, mass killing of the Jews. And these two people were Ashirim, the Midrash says, Papus and Lolinos, they were tremendously wealthy individuals in Eretz Yisraeli, in Eretz Lod, that when people came, Oleh Regalim, they would give them kesef, zahav, food, money, anything that people were missing for having a proper experience of Chag in Eretz Yisrael, they would provide for them. Tremendous. So Rashi says that these two people, they went to the king, they said, we killed her. In order to be killed and spare the rest of the people from being killed. So there are those Mefarshim who suggest that this Papus ben Yehuda is the same, the Papus that spoke to Rabbi Yehuda and said, well, you're endangering your life by teaching Torah publicly and so on. This whole story of Papus was this fellow Papus ben Yehuda from Harugei Lod. The Gemara says that in the famous Gemara that the son of Rabbi Yossi had a near-death experience, and when he came back to life, his father asked him, what did you see? And he said, Olam hapuch ra'iti, I saw an upside down world. Elyonim lemata, tachtonim lemala, the people who are important here, they're not that necessarily important up there, and vice versa. And he said, Shamati omrim, I heard that they said, Ashrei mi sheba'al lekan v'talmudo beyado. Fortunate is the person that comes here and he still remembers Amud Yomi, still remembers his limud, right? And he also heard, he said, that the place that Harugei Malchut are there, nobody could even be in their mechitza up there. The Gemara says, who's Harugei Malchut? Rabbi Akiva v'chaverav? That's pashut, right? Even without Rabbi Akiva being Harugei Malchut, you couldn't be in his mechitza. So it says, no, it's talking about Harugei Lod. This person, there's a tremendous thing to put together. Nagaon speaks about this. It's not so simple how the Vilna Gaon understands this whole story, but nevertheless, when you have this insight in the Gemara, you'll ask yourself a simple question. Simple question. Papus ben Yehuda, when he was nitpas, the Gemara does not say why he was taken to be killed. Right? We just know that he was taken to be killed. He certainly was not teaching Torah. That he opposed Rabbi Akiva doing. So now if you say that historically this is the same Papus ben Yehuda together with Lulinus, that they were Harugei Lod, what's the obvious question? The obvious question is, he says, Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva, fortunate you are Rabbi Akiva, that you were nitpasta al divrei Torah, that you were taken to be killed for divrei Torah. And he says, Oy lo le Papus, for me, it's not good because I was nitpas al devarim beterim. And, this is the language that he has. He compares himself with Rabbi Akiva that nitpas al devarim betelim, he says, on regular mundane things. According to what we're saying, this was no devarim betelim. This is not mundane reasons. He was moser nefesh for saving Klal Yisrael. The Gemara says nobody could be in his mechitza. So the musar of this is two things. A, if something is going to happen to someone, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has 1,001 different ways for you to be nitpas lemalchut if it's going to happen. Right? It doesn't have to be the way Rabbi Akiva did it. But B, mainly, from this you learn that everything in comparison with Divrei Torah is Devarim B'Telim. The main thing that counts in life is Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva shenitpasta al Divrei Torah. Promoting Torah, perpetuating Torah, that is considered Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva shenitpasta al Divrei Torah. Something very deep, very meaningful to think about. And with that said, we're going on. We have to finish on time. Yes.
I think one of them just had
Well, I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe it was a murder method that needed two people. Not sure exactly why. Good question. You know what? Once you're at that question, this is both Rabbi Akiva, we spoke about this briefly, and also Harugelot, if you understand it like Rashi says, both of them you have to ask the obvious question, were they allowed in a regular circumstance to do this? Rabbi Akiva, we mentioned before, is not one of the three things that you ought to give your life on, right? And here, there's a whole sugya in Sanhedrin, really, in Daf Ayin Bet and on, whether or not something that is not, they're not coming to you to tell you, give up someone else or else will kill you. Here is voluntarily going to give up your life for saving other people's life. Is that mutar? When it's mutar? How it's mutar? That's a whole question by itself. And then, of course, goes with it your question of, well, if you can do it with one, why would you both go together? Which is a very valid question. Says the Gemara, Lo yakel adam. We go going back to the end of the Mishnah now, that we mentioned in certain places when you're in Keneged Shara Mizrach, when you're facing the Beit HaMikdash, the gates of the Mikdash, you cannot be lightheaded. You cannot act certain actions that are not kavod. Keneged Shara Mizrach, shu mechuvan neged Bet Kodesh HaKodashim. The Mishnah said Shara Mizrach is directly mechuvan in front of Bet Kodesh HaKodashim. Therefore, you have to conduct yourself with proper conduct. Says the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Lo amru ela min hatzofim velifnim. It's not necessarily in Chutz La'aretz. It's only from a place called Sofim. Sofim means sofe, to see. Sofe u'mabit. That means that's a place, that's the farthest place that you can still see the place of the Mikdash. Says the Gemara, uberroeh, and we talk about the case that you're seeing it. Ubeshe'en gader, and there's no wall in front between you and the place of Kodesh Kodashim, the place of the Mikdash. And also, we only talk about the case that the Beit HaMikdash is Kayam. The Beit HaMikdash is upstanding and operational. So a lot of miutim over here, which basically would say, nowadays doesn't apply. Tanu Rabbanan. Now let's learn about this. Hanifne biuda lo ifne mizrach u'marav. Now, for this, you need a basic map of Eretz Yisrael, very basic in your mind. Imagine there's Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is on the top, basically north of Eretz Yehuda. The place of the Mikdash is Chatzi. Most of it is in Chelek of Yehuda. A portion of it in Kodesh HaKodashim is in portion of Binyamin. And then the north of Yerushalayim is called the Galil, right? That's north of Yerushalayim. So the Eretz Yehuda is majorly in south of Yerushalayim. Galil is entirely north of Yerushalayim, but there are sides as well. In other words, Eretz Yehuda basically wraps and hugs Yerushalayim. You have places that in front of Yerushalayim from the left side, from west, and you have some from east a little bit as well. So that having in mind, we go through the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan, Hanifne Yehuda lo yifne mizrach u'marav. If you're in Eretz Yehuda, you don't want to go to your bathroom, exposing your body in a Mizrach Marav way. You should sit face or back to Safon and Darom, to north and south. So says the Gemara, Ube Galil, and if you're in Galil, you cannot do that. Lo yifne ela Mizrach Marav. Then you should only sit Mizrach Marav. Remember, Galil is in north of Yerushalayim. So if you sit Safon Darom, if you sit north and south, like the Gemara just suggested by Eretz Yehuda, then you will be facing or backing Yerushalayim. That's not good. So therefore, lo yifne ela Mizrach Marav. The only way you should sit is Mizrach Marav. So that is the Tanna Kama. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi Mati. Rabbi Yossi says it's mutar. What's mutar? Everything is mutar. If you ask Rabbi Yossi, halachot of bathroom, directions, he says, Chazak Baruch, have a nice day. Do whatever you want. That's what Rabbi Yossi would say. Why? She'aya Rabbi Yossi Omer, because Rabbi Yossi held, Lo asru ela bero'eh u'makom she'ensham gader u'b'zman she'ashkina shora. Rabbi Yossi would say, you know why? When it's asur, it doesn't apply nowadays because there's no shechina in Yerushalayim, right? Because that's not there. That's for the beginners. But even if you had shechina, if you have a wall of a bathroom, you're good to go. And even if you don't have a wall, you talk about someone that sees actually the place of the mikdash. So, hey, do whatever you want. Says the Gemara, v'chachamim osrin. And Chachamim say it's asur. So wait a second, what's the problem? We just mentioned that Tanna Kama says is asur. In other words, Rabbi Yossi, we mentioned him only in contrast with Tanna Kama. The reason we brought Rabbi Yossi is to say, well, Tanna Kama says you have to sit like this, hey, you have to sit like this. If you're in Yehuda Azoi, and if you're in Galil Azay, and then we said Rabbi Yossi says, oh, everything's mutar. And then you end up the sentence saying the Chachamim says asur. Well, Chazak Baruch, you just told me Tanna Kama says it's asur. You're repeating yourself. So Gemara asks that obvious question. Chachamim hainu Tanna Kama. Chachamim is the same repetition of Tanna Kama. Gemara says no. Ika benai who's studying. Says if you pay attention, Tanna Kama said that in all Eretz Yehuda is asur, right? In all Eretz Galil is like this. In all Eretz Yehuda is like that. Does not differentiate, as we mentioned before, especially in Eretz Yehuda, you have stadim. You have places that are enwrapping Yerushalayim from the sides. It's not directly keneged Yerushalayim. So is that asur or mutar? So if you pay attention, the language of Tanna Kama was, the whole Yehuda is like this. The whole Galil is like that. What did Chachamim say? Chachamim didn't say that. Pay attention to the language of Chachamim one more time. Says the Gemara over here, the Chachamim are saying, when you are keneged Yerushalayim, and that's what they say, it is asur. Says the Gemara, Ika b'nayu stadin. The difference is Sedadin, which Tanna Kama holds that Stadin also are Asur, and Chachamim are Mekel. That any place that's not Keneged Yerushalayim when you sit that way, according to Tanna Kama, Stadin are Asur, because when you are going to bathroom in Yehuda, says Rashi, Kol Yehuda mashma. It says in Yehuda, anywhere in Yehuda is included in that mashma'ut of the choice of words of Tanna Kama. Whereas Rabbanan, Batrai, Sevira Keneged Yerushalayim Mamash Asur, says Rashi, Avalistadin Mutar. When you're sitting directly facing Yerushalayim or back to Yerushalayim, that's when it's Asur. If we're in the sides that does not face Yerushalayim, and you're sitting, in that direction, but the direction doesn't hit Yerushalayim, no problem. So this is the three shitot that we have so far. Right? But all three of them hold that chutz la'aretz, outside Eretz Yisrael, would be for sure mutar. Seems like, right? Now we have more to come. Says the Gemara. Tanya idach, another braita. If you are in Yehuda, remember again, Yehuda is mainly in south of Yerushalayim, but it has sides. If you're in Yehuda, lo yifne mizrach u'ma'arav. Do not sit down and face or back to east. Don't sit east-west. You should sit north-south. Ubegalil, and if you're in Galil, north of Yerushalayim, then you should do Safon v'darom. It's going to be Asur, Mizrach u'Ma'arav mutar. Exactly the opposite. You should sit Mizrach u'Ma'arav, east-west, because east-west is facing nothing. It's either facing the Jordan River or it's facing the sea. You're not facing Yerushalayim. The lines do not hit Yerushalayim. But if you sit Safon Darom, and when you go to bathroom, you expose yourself from front, you expose yourself from the back. So either your front is towards Yerushalayim or your back, your perua, your nakedness in front of Yerushalayim, that's disrespectful. Therefore, you don't do north-south, you do rather east-west. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi Matir. So again, we're going through this, right? Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's mutar. What's mutar? Everything is mutar. Shaya Rabbi Yossi Omer, because Rabbi Yossi says that we already know what he's going to say. Lo asru is not asur ela bero'eh. It's only asur when you see it, and therefore here is not a problem. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, 5 lines up, Bizman she bet hamikdash kayam asur. Bizman she'en bet hamikdash kayam mutar. Rabbi Yehuda says this is asur even if you're not seeing it, but the Bet HaMikdash has to be up. Right now, when it's galu, when the Bet HaMikdash is destroyed, it's mutar. Rabbi Akiva oser. Rabbi Akiva says it is asur bechol makom. What does bechol makom mean? In Beverly Hills, it's asur. Doesn't make a difference. Yerushalayim, Galil, Yehuda, Syria, Tehran, Los Angeles, doesn't make a difference. Everything is asur. If you're sitting facing, well, we're not going to say what Rabbi Akiva holds. The Shita Mekubetzet understands Rabbi Akiva's Shita that sitting towards Yerushalayim is asur, right? So the 2 times that you make your Hebrew calendar, you bring it up on your phone and you check for Mizrach, right? For Yerushalayim. One is when you want to daven, one is when you want to go to the bathroom, right? You take your compass out. But Maram Bet Yosef in Siman Gimel, the beginning of Shcharuch, he understands that Rabbi Akiva holds is always asur to sit in Ma'arav. Mizrach Ma'arav is asur because Shekhinah is in Ma'arav. However, Kabbalistically, you understand that has to do also with when you say Lechadodi and you do Kabbalat Shabbat, the reason that we turn, and here in America, you're turning your backs to the Mizrach, so to speak. In Syria, in Turkey, in Iran, it was not a problem. Baghdad wasn't a problem because it was east of Yerushalayim, so always it was Ma'arav. The Hechal was to Ma'arav. Actually, I never forget, there was this guy that thought he was a massive Chacham because he had come for a few months to America and he had seen the Frum community here. He went back to Iran and he thought he's like, God's gift to humanity. So in the middle of the Chadodi, when they got to Boi B'Shalom, the whole Kehillah, 200 people are facing the Echal, and this guy turns back like against the whole Kahal. And I'm thinking to myself, why is he turning back? So then it dawned on me. He says, yeah, because the halakha is, Al-Pi Kabbalah, you turn to do Kabbalat Shabbat to Ma'arav. So he is coming from Los Angeles. He's gone, seen the community in America. There, they turn around because they're facing the Mizrach because that's the Echal. So they turn for Boi B'Shalom to Ma'arav. But here in Rabbi, we're facing Ma'arav the whole time. What are you doing, right? And that's what happens when you don't know why you're doing something and you just see the people do it. But nevertheless, that's when it comes Nogea, that's when it becomes relevant for bathrooms as well, that, Shekhinah is Ma'arav. Maran understands the Shita of Rabbi Akiva, unlike what we mentioned from Shita Mekubetzet, that has not much to do with where Yerushalayim is, facing Yerushalayim. And many places in America could be like northeast, and then actual east would be fine, but it's an east-west thing. So therefore, you cannot have your bathrooms in that way. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Akiva, Hainu Tarakama. The Gemara asks the same question again. It says, basically, you told me Tanakama is Machmi. And then you say Rabbi Akiva is Oser. Same question. The language in the previous Braita was Chachamim Osrim. So we asked the question. Tanakama Hainu Chachamim. Here it says Rabbi Akiva Oser. So Gemara asks the same question. It says, basically, you told me that Tanakama is Oser. Tanakama says is Asur. Then you tell me Rabbi Akiva says is Asur. It's the same thing. Gemara says, no, it's not the same thing. The difference is Chutz La'aretz. Tanakama only says it's Asur when you're in Yehuda or in Galil. That's it. Zehu. Los Angeles, Mutar. Rabbi Akiva would say, regardless of where you are, it's Asur. So now we have some stories. Says the Gemara about this. Rabbi had set up his bathroom place, or the levanim with the bricks that he would sit on, in a Mizrach Marav way, right? Because he held that it would be Asur even in Chutz La'aretz. As Abaye wanted to challenge to see if this is just happened to be this way, or is it Bedavka? So he went when Rabbi was not there, and he switched them 90 degrees, right? He said, let's see what happens. Right? If he turns it back, that means Bedavka, he holds his Asur. If not, not. So Abaye Shadinu Safon Bedarom. Abaye changed the bricks to Safon Darom. Al Rabba came back, Tarzinu, to change them. Amar, and he said, Man hai the Kamet Zayerli. Who is this guy that's trying to chapper with me, to bother me? Right? In other words, he understood what's happening. He said, yeah, I hold this Asur. What do you want from my life? Right? In Chutz La'aretz. They were in Bavel, right? This is Amoraim. Amoraim lived in Bavel, and Bavel will be Asur only according to Rabbi Akiva, and that's why the Gemara is really bringing this in. So take a look at Rashi. Rashi says the reason Abaye did it is lirot im yakpid rabo al kach. He wanted the Davka to check and see if his Rebbe just happened to put the bricks that direction, or if the Davka put it that direction because he's makpid like Rabbi Akiva, and of course turned out to be that he was makpid like Rabbi Akiva. That's story number one, right? Now you think this is intrusive, that he went to the bathroom of the Rebbe when he was not there. Wait for 2 seconds and you'll see much more intrusive. And that's you see how people were willing to do things to learn Torah back then. Not comfortable. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Akiva Smirali says, I hold like Rabbi Akiva, what do you want from my life, basically? Rabbi Akiva holds everywhere it's going to be Asur. Now, Tanya, Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva himself, now that we mentioned stories about Rabbi Akiva. Param Achat. By the way, why did Rachel, the daughter of Kalvasava, marry Rabbi Akiva? You go to Masechet Ketubot, that all of you know it by heart. You go to Masechet Ketubot Daf Samach Gimel. It says because he saw, even though that he was Amaretz, even though that at the time Rabbi Akiva was a complete ignorant individual, she saw in him that was Sanua Umali. He was very Sanua. That's Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is the epitome of tzniut. And yet, when it was for Torah, this is what he did. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Akiva said, Pam achad nichnasti achar Rabbi Yehoshua lebet hakiseh. One time I followed Rabbi Yehoshua into Bet HaKiseh. Now, Rabbi Yehoshua was one of the at least 3 rabbis of Rabbi Akiva that we know of. The main rabbeim of Rabbi Akiva were Rabbi Yehoshua and Rabbi Eliezer. Right? Rabbi Eliezer was the first one. Actually, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer, they shared a lot in common. Rabbi Eliezer is Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol, aka Rabbi Eliezer ben Churkanus. Now, if you take a look at Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, the book that he wrote, the Sefer that he wrote, the first chapter, very first parak, he says the history of Rabbi Eliezer ben Churkanus himself. His father was a billionaire. He was the richest man in the region, Churkanus, and he was 28 years old and he was a bam amaretz. He was a complete ignorant. And he says the story of how he became frum, so to speak, and went to yeshiva. So that's what Rabbi Akiva really shared that history with Rabbi Eliezer. He became his main Rebbe. And then, of course, we have mentioned before the Gemara in Masechet Baba Metzia Daf Nun Chet and Nun Tet, the story of Tanur Shalachnai, how they banned Rabbi Eliezer, they put him in Shamta, in Harem, and people stopped learning with him because of that. Rabbi Yehoshua, who was the main peer of Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol, became the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva. And then, of course, we learned about Nachum Ish Gamzu, that was a role model and a mentor and Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva. So here we're talking about Rabbi Yeshua. So Rabbi Akiva, in his younger years, when he was a student, he went literally followed Rabbi Yeshua into the bathrooms, without him knowing, and watching what he does over there. Says the Gemara, I watched him and I learned 3 things from him, right? Even though that he could have asked him all those things, but it's never the same. When you go to things that are subtle, things that are the person would not remember to teach you or to tell you, you'll see and you'll learn. And that's exactly what happened. He learned 3 things. A, you want to know where Rabbi Akiva developed his shita, that in Chutz La'aretz, here not necessarily Chutz La'aretz, because the Tanaim were in Eretz Yisrael, but nevertheless, he says, I learned from him that enifnin mizrach umarav, that you can't sit mizrach umarav, ela safon v'darom. You don't sit mizrach umarav. Ve'lamati she'en Ifraim me'umad, and I learned from him that you don't expose yourself when you're standing, because that's not snood. You minimize the exposure as much as possible. You sit first, and then you expose yourself the amount that you need and not more. Ve'lamati, and the third thing, she'en mekalachin b'yamin, that you don't wipe yourself with your right hand, ela b'smol, with your left hand. So Rabbi Akiva says this over Amarei ben Azai, right? Who's the person that looks up to Ben Azai, to Rabbi Akiva? Ben Azai, according to the Tosafot, really according to the Gemara in Ketuvot over there, the Gemara says everything that Rachel did for Rabbi Akiva, the daughter of Rachel did for Ben Azai, which indicates that Ben Azai became the son-in-law of Rabbi Akiva. And we already know the Gemara in Bechorot, Daf Nun Chet, the Gemara there says that Ben Azai said, all of Chachmei Israel in comparison to me are like klipat hashu. They're like the shell, the peel of a garlic, chutz min hakrech, aside from Rabbi Akiva, right? He looked up to Rabbi Akiva, who was the giant of generation. So Ben Azai is sitting there, says, what? You did what? You went after your Rebbe to the bathroom? How do you do that? How's that mutar? That's not considered chutzpah. That's not considered disrespect that you went with your Rebbe to the bathroom. Amaleh, he says, yes, it is. It's not a proper conduct, but Torahi velilmod ani tzarich. I did it once because I needed to learn Torah. And you do anything and everything for learning Torah, says the Rebbe.
Was it asur?
He says, he says, yes, it would not be proper conduct. I wouldn't do it again, but I needed to do it once to learn Torah. Now, what's interesting is Ben Azai accepted this, even though that he felt very uncomfortable with this. When Rabbi Akiva said it, he said, okay, I guess that's the way to do it. So he turns around and what does he do? He does the same exact thing to Rabbi Akiva, his Rebbe, right? Tanya. We learned in Berachot Omer, Ben Azai says, one time I went following Rabbi Akiva to the see if I learn anything new, right? And he learned the same exact 3 things. All those 3 things that Rabbi Akiva said he learned from Rabbi Yeshua. Now, Rabbi Yehuda is saying this. What kind of thing is that? I agree with you. I actually was opposed to it when Rabbi Akiva said it, but Torahi velilmod ani tzarich, right? It's Torah and I need to learn. Now you think this is bad. Wait for the next story. Rav Kana, who was one of the main Talmidim of Rav, we spoke about this before in Masechet Bava Kama, Daf Kuf Zayin, and so on. Rav Kana was a tremendous personality, and we learned about what happened when he went. We have more than one Rav Kanas in Shas. We have up to really 6 Rav Kanas maybe, but this is the Rav Kana, and we learned how when he went to Resh Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, the way he dismantled the entire shiur of Rabbi Yochanan. Was a tremendous personality. So Rav Kana Gana to the Puri Rav. He went underneath the bed of Rav. He said, well, how do you learn Siman Resh Mem? Back then, there was no Siman Resh Mem in Orach Chaim, the halachot of Tashmish Amita. How do you learn that? There's no way to learn it. I'm gonna go learn it in Lemase. So Shamet the Sach v'Sachak v'Asasrachav. He saw that he spoke, he laughed, v'Asasrachav, and he was Meshabesh Mita. Amaleh, he was very open, very surprised. He says, Dami pumet Abba kedolo sarif tavshila. He says, it looks like you've never been Meshabesh Mita. It's your first time. What is this? Amaleh, and he says, Kana hachat, you're here, Rav Kana, puk tilab orachara. Go out. It's not derech eretz. Amalo, Torah even limod ani sarif. He said, this is Torah, I need to learn Torah. It says, you have to understand that you talk about people who we try to see the world, we not try. We see the world in our prism, in our lenses. And our lenses are pretty dirty. Unfortunately, right? You have people in the that will put the kala in the shoulder. That's with the simchat katan v'kala. We had earlier on in Daf Chaf about Rabbi Yochanan staying by the Shara Mikveh. The people who are removed from the gashmiut of the world, and we have at the same time the honesty of integrity of the Tanaim and Amoraim, that when they were not holding in that madriga, they were very open about it. We mentioned Rav himself, even though that he was a tremendous chassid, in Masechet Kedushin Daf Pe'alef, he says, it's not about me and you. This madriga of chassidut is about, Hanania and the earlier Maradaf Yudchet over there that they were chassidim. But those who were chassidim, they were tremendous people. And when he says Torah, if a person would go there and his mind is elsewhere, of course that would be completely asur. But this is a testament of the greatness of the Tanaim and Amoraim. Says the Gemara. Now, why is it that you don't clean yourself with the right hand with elabesmol, but you do it with the left hand? So we have multiple different reasons mentioned in the Gemara, and they have enough kamina lala. So pay attention. What says the Gemara? A, because Torah was given through HaKadosh Baruch Hu's right hand, so to speak. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, from his right hand we got the fire of Torah. Torah is fire. Rabba Barachana Amar mipereshi krova lepe. Because right hand is close to your mouth, so you're eating with your right hand. Is not hygiene to clean yourself with that. Ask the doctors if you don't believe me. Says the Gemara, because you tie your tefillin with your right hand on your left hand, so the hand that you use to tie tefillin, right? Ukshartam gives chashivut to the right hand because that's the hand that's used to actually put on tefillin on your body. So therefore, you can't do with the right hand, right? That's correct. As I mentioned, when you have a lefty, you have all of these things switched aside from the first one, which is the Torah being given with the right of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the nafkamina, right? So that's 3 so far. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, because when you show the Tamet Torah, you show it with your right hand, and therefore, out of those 4 reasons that we have, again, as we mentioned, the nafkamina would be for a righty or a lefty. And the Gemara says Ketanai. Rabbi Eliezer Omer miperesh ochel. This is already an earlier machloket Tanaim. On one hand, Rabbi Eliezer says miperesh ochel ba, because you eat with your right hand. Rabbi Yeshua says miperesh kotev ba, there's a new one here, that you write with it, and you write chidushe Torah, you write Torah with it, so therefore you should not be using it for providing yourself. Rabbi Akiva Omer miperesh ma'arev tamet Torah, because you show tamet Torah with it. Amar Rav Tanchum Mar Chanilai. Now the Gemara goes to speak about sniut in betakiseh, which we spoke about before, that you minimize your exposure and when you expose your body and how much you expose your body and so on. Says the Gemara, Rav Tanchum Mar Chanilai, he says, Kol hatzanua betakiseh nitzol mishlosha devarim. If you're careful, if you're tzanua in betakiseh, you're saved from 3 things: mina nechashim, mina akrabim, mina mazikim, from snakes, from scorpions, and also from shedim, from mazikim. And there are those who say, even the chalomot are, you gotta have good dreams. Because we mentioned in 9th paragraph earlier on in the sugya of chalomot that the bad dreams, many times those who are not true, comes from shedim. So if shedim are not going to have any control over you, of course, by extension, it will affect your dreams as well, says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, there was this bet kiseh that was in Tiberia. It was the headquarters of shedim, so to speak, right? You remember before we had rules and regulations for shedim. If you go they're not going to damage you necessarily. If you go during the day, it's much better. With light, it's much better. But this was so dangerous that even if you went two people together during the day, still would be dangerous. And says the Gemara, Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi have Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi, the two Gedolei Ador of Tiberia, they would go even alone and nothing would happen to them. And they asked them, Amri Lehu, Rabbaran, Chachamim asked them, Lo mitzifidu, you're not afraid of shedim there in this battle. Amri Lehu, Anan Kabbalah Gamrinan. He said, we have a Kabbalah in our hand. We have accepted this rule, Kabbalah de betakise tzniuta, that if you're tsanua, veshetikuta, and you're quiet, then you would be, the tzniut saves you from the dangers of mazikin, and Bezrat Hashem will continue this in the days to come.